Peter Dutton, good morning. Welcome to the program. And we've just had some news through that New South Wales has confirmed another case of coronavirus in that state. Again, it's someone who'd been in Iran. That brings us to the travel ban now applying to Iran. There have been some 388 cases there. The real number may well be much higher than that. But look, this travel ban's not applying to South Korea, where there are more than 2,300 cases. Why is that?
Well, there are a few reasons. Firstly, of the 106 deaths that are reported outside of China, 43 of those have been in Iran, so that's the highest number of deaths. And obviously the chief medical officers will look at that fact, but also whether or not the countries have a preparedness within their hospital systems, whether or not Iran really has a full handle on how many cases they have. And I think that's been the jolt out of Iran, just the sudden surge, given that there'd been no reporting or little reporting of cases before that. So all of those factors feed into it.
I appreciate the death rate might be higher in Iran, but it's the same virus strain we're talking about here, isn't it, in all of these countries? We're not talking about a different virus. It still transmits the same way. It still does the same thing to your body.
Yes, it does.
So why not extend this travel ban to places like South Korea and Italy, where there are almost 20 times as many reported cases?
Well, as the chief medical officers pointed out, it's not possible to extend the ban to every country, and we'll see what phase we move into next. But there's particular concern about the lack of reporting out of Iran, the very high death rate, and I don't think
that's my point. I take the point about the death rate being higher, but the sheer number of cases, the scale of this in South Korea, where we have a lot more traffic back and forth, why isn't the travel ban applying there?
Well, David, I think if you look at the underreporting or the lack of reporting coming out of Iran to start with, I think indicated that there was a real concern as to whether they had a handle on the numbers. And I think even the numbers that we're talking about relative to South Korea or elsewhere at the moment potentially are well underestimated. So it's also confidence in the numbers that are being reported out of different jurisdictions. And obviously South Korea has a more advanced health system, and they have been reporting numbers for a period of time. So I think there are key differences between those different markets.
Can I ask what powers the Border Force Commissioner has here? The PM indicated the other day that he'd be looking at restrictions at airports and so on. If a flight were to arrive today at Sydney Airport, Melbourne Airport from South Korea, and a number of people were presenting as unwell, what would happen?
Well, those people would be put into isolation. So the first thing here for us to deal with is the health of Australians, obviously our frontline officers. We want to make sure that they're safe, so that's the first priority for the Commissioner. But these people then will be put into isolation. There are arrangements in place with each of the territory.
But everyone else on that plane can come on in?
Yeah, well, there would be a call made about the extent of the illness. People within the immediate proximity of that person or who had come into contact with that person would be identified.
That's what I want to ask. Can the Commissioner make a call and block a whole plane load of people coming in?
Well, yes, he can, if he believes that there's grounds to do so, but that would be highly unlikely. The more likely nature would be that those that are seated around the person that's sick would be identified, would be tested, and but the health is the most important aspect to start with. So, as I say, there are well-established arrangements with the state health departments, and we would test that person very quickly just to identify whether or not it was coronavirus or something else.
And will this be the approach going forward? If we don't extend the travel ban to more countries like we have China and Iran, will it be on a case-by-case, plane-by-plane situation?
Well, we've got airport liaison officers at most of the major hubs as well, so there's a lot of work that's done before people get onto the plane. We also message out, I think, very effectively through the airlines, through other stakeholders to make sure that people aren't going to travel if they realise that they're going to be turned around when they arrive in Australia. And there are many ways in which we can identify either on flights or before people board, and to try and reduce the risk. But we need to recognise now that this has spread to 61 countries outside of China. So there's a very serious development, and you start to get a compounding effect from there, which is what the Prime Minister alluded to on Friday. That's right.
All right, let's turn to some other issues. The President Donald Trump has this morning announced that the US has signed a peace deal with the Taliban. There are still some difficult negotiations to come, but it does mean American and NATO troops, he says, could be out of Afghanistan within 14 months. What does this mean for the 400 Australian personnel there?
Well, firstly, David, we would welcome any peace agreement. There's been a lot of effort put in by coalition partners. Australians have fought alongside our allies for many years in an effort to provide a brighter future for Afghanistan. It's been an incredibly important effort, and if there are troop withdrawals, then we'll work that out with the United States. But obviously the Taliban needs to abide by the conditions of any such agreement. But well done on the United States for being able to broker such a deal. And
okay, but it means the Australians will come out in the next year?
If there's a withdrawal of coalition troops, we will do that in line with consultations with the United States, the UK and our Five Eyes partners. Well,
it's a point at which to reflect on the fact we've been there for nearly 2 decades now. We lost some 40 Australian soldiers in this war. When you look back at all of this, the Taliban now going back into power under this deal, has it been worthwhile?
Well, for us, David, we always mark the loss of any Australian soldier in any conflict. Their families still live with that pain today. But for us, there are important equities in the Middle East. We've done an enormous amount in terms of intelligence collection in Afghanistan, in Iraq, elsewhere across Syria, for example. And the collection of that intelligence has stopped terrorist attacks taking place in the West, including in Australia, in Indonesia and elsewhere. So there are many facets to our involvement in the conflict.
Sure, but if it means the Taliban's back in power, are you comfortable with that?
Well, I'm comfortable if people aren't being slaughtered and attacked, and that young girls can go to school, that there's a brighter future for that country. Well, if they can go to school. Well, and this will be part of the discussion. And as you say, we want to make sure that the Taliban and others abide by the conditions and the intent of the agreement. But we'll wait for the detail.
The ASIO boss, Mike Burgess, gave a very interesting speech this week. He said the number of terrorism leads we're investigating right now has doubled since this time last year. It's plateaued at an unacceptably high level, he said. And he spoke about the extreme right-wing terror threat being real and growing. Can I ask you, Minister, do you have any idea why right-wing extremism is growing?
Well, David, I think if you look at the proliferation now of material on websites, the availability on the dark web for people to communicate in networks that were never imaginable even 10 years ago, of course you're going to get this extremist view spread very rapidly around the world. The advice from ASIO and from other agencies, CIA and others, indicate that young people can be radicalised in whatever way online within a couple of weeks. So I think that's part of the cause, and as Duncan Lewis, the predecessor to Mike Burgess, but now Mike Burgess has pointed out, and as I've said before, the fight of ASIO against right-wing extremism has been going on for decades. And
why is the problem growing now? I mean, I take your point about the ability to access information, but why are people attracted to this more now?
Well, I think people receive the information and they accept the propaganda, and I can't tell you the psychological makeup that would incline somebody to do so.
But it's important to understand why this is happening, surely, if you're going to combat it.
Well, people will be attracted to all sorts of causes, cults, and movements. And if you've got that information, if you are reading it, if you're believing it, if you're watching it on YouTube, you're listening to these sermons, then people will fall for that. And we need to make sure that people are educated. There's a lot of effort that goes on by ASIO to talk to community leaders, to leaders of those organisations, obviously de-radicalisation programs.
Yeah, but when it comes to the right-wing stuff, Minister, Australia has not prescribed any right-wing terror organisation, unlike other countries. And I know you've said you haven't been called on to do so by ASIO. Do we need to change the way the listing process works?
I don't think we do. I think the listing process has served us well for a long period of time. It's obviously an arduous process in that it needs to go for consultation to the states and territories, to their first officers, and it's signed off by the Prime Minister as well. But I've not rejected advice from ASIO. If ASIO's recommended a listing, then I'll list. I've been criticised for not listing Hezbollah over the course of the last 12 months or so. But the agencies look at all of this, and we don't have a presence in our country of some of these right-wing groups as well. So if there's a presence, if there's an emerging, and if the ASIO boss believes that there's a case for listing, I promise you that organisation will be listed. We're completely blind to where people are.
Well, just on
the
that,
spectrum. I want to make sure we neutralise that threat.
You seem to suggest this week that Islamist terrorism is left-wing terrorism. Can you just clarify that? Is that what you're suggesting?
I just think the point I was making, David, is I'm just completely blind to somebody's religious beliefs.
Sure, but is Islamist terrorism left-wing?
Well, you can put it wherever you like on the spectrum.
I'm asking where you put it.
Well, my point, I put it in the same lunacy basket as I do those on the right wing.
But it's not left wing, is it?
And I don't believe that we should tolerate people acting outside of the law wherever they are on the spectrum.
Okay, but it's not left wing, is it? Islamist terrorism?
It's an organisation that's on the spectrum, David, and it doesn't matter where they are.
Doesn't ASIO say that it doesn't fit on a left-right continuum?
You can get into the semantics of it.
Well, you are, Minister. That's the point I'm saying. You've suggested it's left wing. It's not, is it?
David, the point that I would make is wherever people are on the spectrum, if they are terrorists, if they pose a threat to Australians, and I think I've demonstrated this in my time in this portfolio.
Sure, but it's important to be accurate about what you're trying to fight here,
except on the basis that they pose a threat to our country. So that's the approach I've taken.
The ASIO boss also pointed out there are more foreign spies in Australia today than there were during the height of the Cold War. Are they mostly from China?
Well, they're not just from China, but they're from Iran, from Russia.
Are they mostly from China?
And from elsewhere. Well, I'll let the ASIO boss provide more detail if he wants. He hasn't gone into that detail.
Why can't you know the answer to this?
Well, if he wants to go into the detail of that, he will.
Well, you're here now, Minister. I'm just asking you as the Minister, are most of these foreign spies from China?
Well, David, I'm giving you this answer. That is, I don't care where people come from. If they pose a threat to our national interest, to our sovereignty, if they're engaging in interference in our political system or
sure, but it matters where they come from.
Well, of course it does. And for us, if they're posing a threat,
where are they
if they're
coming
acting
from?
Outside, well, I've just listed some of the countries, but others. And if we find somebody who is acting against our national interests outside of the law, then we act against them.
It seems to suggest that the number he's talking about, that the current foreign transparency scheme isn't adequate or isn't working. Do you need to change the register for foreign spies, foreign agents? Do you need stronger powers, in particular the suggestion of detaining foreign spies?
Well, if ASIO suggests that there is a case to be made, we'd be happy to look at that. We've introduced and passed 19 tranches of national security laws which have directly resulted in terrorist attacks being thwarted, in criminal syndicates being disrupted. So if the ASIO boss
what about,
or ASIS
okay,
or ASD,
ASIO made. What about the parliamentary committee?
We'll look at it.
The Joint Parliamentary Committee on Intelligence and Security 2 years ago, it recommended a change here to allow foreign spies to be detained along with terror suspects for 24 hours of questioning. 2 years ago they did that. Is the government going to move on that front?
Well, David, the process you're referring to is there was a sunset clause built into the legislation, so that comes up in September of this year.
And a recommendation to replace it with this new detention power.
And look, we're going through that process with the committee at the moment.
It's a long process.
I think. Well, it should be, because you're talking about significant powers. There needs to be proper oversight. There needs to be judicial oversight in some of the processes as well. So there's a lot to get right. We'll work through that, and we've got up until September to do it.
There's a damning story in News Corp papers this morning about AUSTRAC, which is in your portfolio as well, the financial crimes watchdog. Did AUSTRAC sit on evidence of potential child sex crimes for more than a year?
No, it didn't. And this hatchet job on Nicole Rose should be seen for what it is. I mean, Nicole's, I think, taken AUSTRAC to an unprecedented level of success, not only with the banks, but many of the criminal syndicates that they're now working on with the ACIC and the Australian Federal Police and their state counterparts as well.
So there's no delay here? No delay in...
No, there's not. And the personal attacks on Nicole Rose at a time when she's going after some pretty big fish, I think is pretty outrageous. Now, I can tell you my experience with Nicole Rose is that she is one of the most exceptional public servants that we have in the Commonwealth. I deal with her on a regular basis. I have the utmost confidence in her, and I found her frankly, to be one of the most impressive people in public life that I've met, and I think people should be proud of the work she does.
More specifically on pedophiles using the dark web for child exploitation to watch streaming of abuse, often in the Philippines. There's been a lot of talk about what the government might be doing here. Can you clear it up for us? What are you going to do about this?
Well, as the Police Commissioner the other day, along with the CEO of the ACIC and AUSTRAC, made this case at the press club that you would have seen, we've got groups, syndicates who are operating on the dark web at the moment that we just can't stop. And we wouldn't allow any suburb or town within our country to be lawless. We wouldn't allow children to be raped and sexually assaulted within a suburb and the police not able to go in and stop that. And that's what we've got on the dark web. So I think there's a case that is building for us to look at the way in which the police operate on the dark web, that they can use, frankly, the same expectation that the community has in real life online. That is, the same laws should apply in real life online. At the moment,
would you give police the powers, the capability, the resources that the Australian Signals Directorate has overseas, give the AFP those powers at home?
Well, I think already, David, you're seeing elsewhere, the United States, the United Kingdom, where something like that works. And I think there is a case for the police, if they can't get into a syndicate. There was a syndicate operating out of the US called Playpen, which was deliberately targeting prepubescent children. Now, that's the sort of syndicates that we're talking about at the moment. They're operating with complete impunity on the website, on the dark web, and if they're operating these syndicates, the police should be able to stop it. And it's an inconvenient topic to talk about because nobody wants to talk about children being sexually abused, but that's what we're dealing with. And I think properly oversighted powers that the police can exercise judiciously, if it's going to save children from being sexually abused here or in the Philippines or elsewhere in the world, then I think it's something that should be given proper consideration.
Final one, Minister. Can I ask you about domestic violence? There were some very moving speeches in the Parliament this week for Hannah Clark and her children killed there in Queensland. But let me read you the comments of Pauline Hanson. She says, "Don't bastardise all men out there, or all women for that matter, because these things happen. A lot of people are driven to do these acts for one reason or another. Driven to do these acts." Is Senator Hanson an appropriate person to be chairing the Senate Family Law Inquiry?
Well, I don't agree with Senator Hanson's comments, and I've been a long time since I was a police officer, 20 years, but I can tell you that some of the images of domestic violence, women being assaulted, women screaming at the door as you approach a residence, stay with me today, and I want to make sure that we do all we can to keep women and children safe. Senator Hanson has her views. We live in a democracy. She's able to express them.
Why is she chairing this inquiry then? Why did the government put her in that position?
Well, she's, again, just to make this point, she's entitled to her views. She can be condemned or praised for her views, depending on your perspective. I don't agree with them, but we're in a parliamentary democracy process, and if she wants to make comments, she can justify them.
But I'm asking you to justify why the government would put her in charge of an inquiry into this very area.
Well, because she has a perspective in this area, and we're happy to listen to all perspectives.
It's one that's out of step with your views, though, with many community views.
Well, in relation to the statement that you've just made, I've put very clearly my position. There would be other statements that she would make because she's had constituents that she feels very strongly about. She obviously believes that some people have been wronged, and in the circumstance where you're talking about all people, all males, all females, all children, I mean, let's be realistic. She has a perspective to put. I think we listen to that, but in the end, the government will put in place recommendations that we believe will strengthen the family law system or make a better, safer environment for women and children, and that'll be the priority of the Prime Minister and the government.
Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, David.